Thank you. બહુ ફાઇન છે, એવું ફાઇન
Ajitbhai, we are ready.
Yeah, okay. Pranam, Jai Jinendra. Welcome to this final class for 2023. As discussed before, we will be, in this year, this will be the last class. And we have agreed to resume these classes on the 9th of January. That's a Tuesday, so we're taking a couple of weeks break. I hope that's welcome to all. And looking at the attendance today, it looks like people are already either away or I got other things being prepared for the break. Let's start with the prayer. Let me first share my slides. We'll start with the prayers. Namo Ariyantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadvam Havai Mangalam. Namo Ariyantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadvam Havai Mangalam. Namo Ariyantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadvam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarusura Surendra Mahito, Virambudha Sansrita, Virena Bihata, Swakarmanichayo, Viraya Nityam Namah. Veera Tirthamidam Prautamatulam, Veerashaghoram Tapo, Veere Sri Dhruti Kirtikanti Nichaya, Sri Veerabhadram Disa. Kamuthe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati, Prabhusthalya Manovrutti Parshanath Sri Estu Vaha. अंगूठे अमृत वसे लपति तना भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. As discussed, we are carrying on with the topic of Bhagwan Mahavir's 27 lives before he became Bhagwan Mahavir. And we have been exploring the journey of that soul as part of our narrative regarding the Kalp Sutra. As we did last week, I'm going to leave some time for questions and discussions today. We're also going to try and get a vote on the topics that we want to maybe consider for selection after we finish this particular topic. As I said last week, we won't go through the whole detail of Kalp Sutra. We will stop at the narrative where Bhagwan Mahavir's 27 lives at the time when the life of Bhagwan Mahavir. We won't go into the details of the life of Bhagwan Mahavir this time, because that is also very long and we could probably carry on with that topic for the rest of the year, that is 2024. But I think people may want to start a new subject. So let's discuss that. As suggested last week, please feel free while the class is going on to put some suggestions in the chat. Last week, there were two suggestions. One was about Nau Tattva, one was about Jain geography. So if there is anything else that you'd like to consider, please let me know. And I will suggest some preferences which I think would be useful for everybody. Okay. So last week we reviewed the narrative of Bhagwan Mahavir's life from his first life as Naisar to the fifth life as a Brahmin called Kaushik in a place called Kolak. A summary of the life of the Brahmin Kaushik is given in the next slide. Just the slide that I shared last week, but with a few additions. So the order so far, the first life when Bhagwan Mahavir's soul achieves Samyakta, and as we all know, that is the time from which, that is the life from which the lives of every Tirthankar is counted, and for us as well, for everybody else, spiritually, the time that you achieve Samyaktva is the time that your spiritual progress begins. So anything before that does not necessarily move you any further towards moksha, and therefore the end of a life as a sansari. Naisar, a human life, he achieves Samyaktva and his spiritual progress starts. The life after Naisar is born in Saudharma Devlok as a Dev with a lifespan of 1 Palyopam. The third life from this Dev from Saudharma Devlok is born as Marichi, a human, grandson of Bhagwan Rushabdev and a son of Bharat Chakravarti. Following that life, which as we all remember, and we discussed the life of Marichi in significant detail, and the two major incidents that resulted in a downfall, we discussed in detail and explored some of the reasons why that led to downfall. But the next life after Marichi, because of all the punya karma that was accumulated during his time as a Tridandi and prior to that as a monk under Bhagwan Rushabdev's order, the punya takes the soul to Brahmdevlok with a lifespan of 10 Sagarapam. So that was the fourth life. From Brahmdevlok, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is born as a Brahmin by the name of Kaushik. Now, Kaushik as we discussed last week, spends a large part of his long life in earning money and enjoying the fruits of his wealth. So this was a very, very long life compared with our limited lifespan of 100, maybe if you're very lucky, 120, 125 years. That would probably be the limit in this time. Now, Kaushik had very strong desires for enjoyment, for all the pleasures of the senses. He was not kind in his conduct, so it's described as Vishay Asakt, meaning he was engrossed in the pleasures of the senses, and Hinsadi Karmo Ma, Krur Radhaivaro. So he was careless and not kind and cruel in anything that he did that was basically potentially harmful or was actually harmful to other life. So as a Jain and somebody who has digested the principles of Jainism or even any of the Sanatan Eastern religions, there is a natural and an accepted understanding that all life is precious and that any action, thought, you need to be conscious of the fact that anything that harms other living beings, you don't want to be cruel in those. You need to be aware of the need to be kind and considerate of other life forms as well. But here, this words basically Vishayasakt and Hinsadi Karmo Ma Krur Radhaivaro, meaning I can't care, I don't care about what happens to other people. So that kind of an attitude, not just other people, but any kind of other life form, that kind of an attitude does not bode well for the spiritual future of the soul. Towards the end of this life of 80 lakh purvas, he again becomes a Tridandi sadhu because of the sanskar from his previous life as Marichi, where he actually set out that particular order of a Tridandi. And that is something that we will see again and again in future lives, because that is where the soul then, because that order was then established and stayed around. And even these days, as I reminded, there are similar practitioners, probably with a similar dress code that started off at that time of Bhagwan Rishabhdev. Now, very important period here after the previous life of Kaushik. What happens when Kaushik's, the Brahmin's life ends? It's a very long life, most of it spent in pleasures of the senses and accumulation of wealth, and the last part as a Tridandi, where he must have done some penance, but whatever the soul did at that time did not actually take him very far spiritually. And this is what happens. Now, on the title of this slide, I've said life number 6, Pushpamitra, a Brahmin. But before Bhagwan Mahavir's soul comes to that life, there is a lot of other lives that happen in the middle, after the life of Kaushik, the Brahmin. Following death in this life, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul then spends a long time as subhuman life forms. It's described as Tiryanchuni. The life after Kaushik was in Tiryanchuni, meaning it's not clearly described exactly what kind of Tiryanch, but Atherian is subhuman, maybe 2-sensed, 3-sensed, 4-sensed, maybe even 5-sensed animal. The soul spends a long time in such life forms, suffering the pains of such lives, and having suffered for a long time and reduced the burden of his karmas, akam nirjara. So after a long time and many, many lifetimes in this kind of lives, where by the very nature of those lives, there is predominantly pain, discomfort, and the likelihood of being killed and not really getting to ripe old age like we possibly have a chance in a human life, or there is no guarantee of a long life there, because animals suffer from all kinds of animals and insects and other 2, 3, 4 sensed life forms, and in 1 sense life forms suffer a long time through all kinds of things, as we all know. The number of such lives and other details are not included in the narrative here, but there may be in the sources that I have looked at. It's possible that there may be more detail in other sastras. Over a long period of time, the burden of karmas as a result of just spending them out becomes reduced to such an extent that the soul slowly progresses spiritually and finally is born as a human being, as a Brahmin called Pushpa Mitra. One book says Pushpa Mitra, another book just says Pushpa, in a city called Sthuna, with a long lifespan of 72 lakh purvas. Again, in this life, a long time is spent in enjoyment without much regard for spiritual progress. But Pushpa, towards the end of his life, from the sanskar, from the sort of spiritual awareness and particular attraction towards that kind of life, he becomes a tridandi in this life as well. And as a result of the tap conducted in this period of his life, meaning Agnan tap, and he is not particularly enlightened, the understanding of the reasons for spiritual progress is not there, well established, and that does not necessarily give you the ability to progress spiritually much further. But as a result of all the tap that he conducts in this life as a tridandi, he acquires enough punya that gives the soul the life of a dev in Sudharma Devlok, with a moderately long lifespan. So the way it's described is the Madhyasthiti na dev tarike emne Devloknu Sudharma Devloknu Ayushyamadu. Now, in Kalpsutra Kathasar, which is one of the sources that I refer to, Sunanda Ben Vora, she is the scholar who has written many books, as I've said before. She briefly describes the different types of devs. Now, some basic facts about devs. Now, there are 4 different categories or 4 different types of devs. One type is called Bhuvanapati. Now, Bhuvanapati devs have, Bhuvan is an abode or a place, and Bhuvan is like a palace. So Bhuvanpati devs have their abodes in what's called as Ratnaprabha Prithvi. So that is the realm below the surface where we currently are. So this whole sort of mass of land mass is much, much deeper below us, and within that depth of Earth, basically, it's called Ratna Prabha Prithvi, much lower than where we are. There are abodes of Devs, and they are called Bhuvanpati Devs, and there are many different categories or subcategories among the Bhuvanpati Devs. Then we got the Vyantar Devs. Then we got the Jyotishak Devs. Jyotishak Devs are the, as some of you probably knows, Jain Dharma describes the stars, the moon, the sun, and all the nakshatras as vimans of Dev, so they are Jyotishak. And in the realm where it's called Manushya Lok, where human beings are generally or can be born, that's a small part in the center, and at the middle of which, from where we are in Jambudvip, we are at the southern end of Jambudvip in Bharat Kshetra, but north from us, at the center of Jambudvip, there is a Meru Parvat, and this Jyotishak Dev Vimans or Dev Viman in simple terms means a plane, but these Vimans are sort of up in the sky, and those around Meru Parvat are called Chal Viman. Chal Viman meaning by their very nature, they move around Meru Parvat. Now, we got one Meru at the middle of Jambudvip, and then there are other Merus in part of the other islands surrounding Jambudvip. So Jambudvip is in the center, and around it we've got the Lavan Samudra. It's called Lavan because it is salty. Lavan means salt. So this ocean around us is salty, as we all know, and it extends very far beyond, according to Jain geography. And around that Lavan Samudra, there is a ring-shaped island called Gatki Khand. Then around that, there is another ocean, which is very big as well. And around that, there is another ring-shaped island called Puskara Dvip. And so Jambudvip, Gatki Khand, and half of Puskara Dvip is what is called Adi Dvip. Now, there are other Meru Parvats in those other Dvips, and there are Chal, meaning mobile, Jyotishak Vimans there. There are other kinds of Viman which do not move. So all the Dvips, all the islands, the ring-shaped islands beyond Puskara Dvip, going further on both sides, have got stars, suns, moons, but those are stationary. They do not move around. And so that's the third type of Devs. So they stay in this Jyotish Vimans. And the fourth type, which is the higher order of Devs, is called Vaimanik Devs. And they are 12 Devloks. So one after the other, going further up, higher up into the universe, and beyond the there are 12 Devloks, and right at the top, just below the Siddh Shila, there are Anuttar Viman, where generally souls who have got only one life left before they go to moksha in their next life, they are often in the Anuttar Vimans, and in their next life they would be born as human beings, achieve Keval Gnan, and go to moksha. So that is the order. Saudharma Devlok is the first of the Vaimanic Devloks. Now, towards the end of today's class, I'll describe briefly what is the nature of life in a Devlok. And before that, we've got some questions for us to contemplate and think about that. Now, before we go further, or maybe, and I think maybe this is the best time now, and then we'll explore further the life of Bhagwan Mahavir. So, from the life of Kaushik, the Brahmin, he spends a long time in subhuman life forms, and then Pushpa Mitra becomes a Tridandi in the sixth life, and as a result of tap conducted in this period of this life, Agnan Tap acquires Punya, which gives the soul a life of a Dev, Saudharma Devlok, with a moderately long lifespan. And we've understood a bit about the different Devloks. Okay. Now, before we go into the next life, so the life number 7 is as a Dev, Vaimanik Devlok in Saudharma Devlok. What determines spiritual progress? What I want to try and explore from you, so I'm going to try and open up for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides at this point for a few minutes. Just a question. What do you think from what you learned so far, or even just generally, the fact that we sort of accept as Jains, and in this, what we started off with is that we are, each one of us, an individual soul, that we move from one life to another as a result of the karmas that we acquire. But the reason why we acquire karmas is how aligned we are to the nature of the soul, and or how distant we are from the awareness of the soul. And as a result of this, we spend many lives. But what is it that helps begin our spiritual progress? Now, we've said that the first biggest step for any soul is the achievement of Samyaktva. Prior to achievement of Samyaktva, there is a slow progress at various stages when we have not actually reached that stage of Samyaktva, but we may have moved closer towards getting to the point of acquiring Samyaktva. But what are the fundamental virtues that determine spiritual progress, and what are the faults which would determine that we don't actually rise, but we fall? And as Jainism describes, we have spent an infinite number of lifespans in this kind of a journey, where we've done some good, acquired punya, enjoyed the fruits of that punya, and fallen down back again. And then, as we've seen in Bhagwan Mahavir's life, in subhuman life forms many times, and with some basic punya karma that we may have acquired without really understanding the nature of life and spiritual progress. We just acquire punya, go back up in Devlok, come back down, and then again spend time going from one life to other. So let me stop talking now. Any thoughts? If you look at ourselves, what faults do you think might take us down?
Ego, pride, greed, they'll take us down. Like when Marichi was getting ego, his soul.
How does that manifest? I mean, just considering our lives, what are the kinds of simple narratives that we experience on a daily basis? That, I mean, what I'm trying to get here is for us to reflect on the thoughts that go through our minds, the actions that we take, the speech that we use, and how that determines what kind of karmas we acquire. So where give me some examples, anybody?
Is it that we are sort of more focusing me as in my body rather than me as in my soul? And everything we do, everything we think, it's mostly around the body and identify ourselves with me rather than the soul. And then that actions are harmful to our soul.
Yeah, definitely. But it is also, there are two terms that are used, aham and mama. Aham means who and mama means mine. Who and maru.
Mm.
So the emphasis on who, meaning I, is what you're talking about with ego and pride. But there, the focus is on who as my physical self, my sensual pleasures, my selfish needs and selfish desires, at the exclusion of other life. Now, when we begin to abandon that and begin to understand that every life is similar to us, and we begin to view all life in general with a very benign nature, and deep down it is described as love for every life. So prem. When we're talking about prem, love, it's in spiritual terms, it's universal love. And when we begin to recognize that other life is exactly similar and it's exactly like us, and that anything that our awareness of all life and the similarity, first of all, removes all prejudice from our mind. If that thought and that feeling actually progresses to its ultimate level, it also determines that our consideration for the welfare of other life forms gets to such a level that any action that potentially harms other life, I mean, living a life as a sansari without fail means that some other life is going to be harmed, and that is true for any life form. However, this awareness that you are part of a huge collective of other life forms and that you are all similar, one removes the sense of prejudice, sense of superiority, sense of pride, sense of selfishness. And all those virtues, when you begin to feel the benevolent nature of your true self, then you just become joyful, meaning some of the fundamental stages that tell you whether you are progressing spiritually or not is when you begin to, happiness, anand, is the normal fundamental quality of the soul. So happiness comes from within, and when we begin to realize that everything else that we think is making us happy, which is dependent on other materials, on vastu, on vyakti, meaning other people. We think that we are happy because of our relationships, because of our connections, because of how others love us and how we love others, at the exclusion of the wider universe. So prem or love limited to a certain number of immediate family members by its very nature then leads us to a restricted area where we necessarily become less considerate of the wider universe and other life forms. So from that point of view, the life of a monk who is completely denounced the world becomes much greater than our life as a sansari. And you will see, if you come in contact with monks and nuns, that their level of happiness without anything in terms similar to possessions that we have, so almost no possessions at all, and apparently a very hard life from the viewpoint that we would basically compare their life with in terms of the kinds of comforts that we enjoy. Their life would be considered very hard, but if you consider the level of happiness and peace and anand that they experience, which you can see in their faces, you can see in their lifestyle, in everything that they express, and the benevolent nature of their interactions with any other person, you can immediately recognize that theirs is a much happier life. So in terms of understanding the virtues that help you progress, it's useful to understand the difference between the life of a monk and a nun and our lives, but also it's useful to understand that spiritual progress equates with progressive anand, progressive happiness. So one of the first, some of the fundamental things that I sometimes find very useful is, am I at peace with myself? Am I benevolent to other people? Am I kind to other people? Am I considerate about the welfare of others? Then I am at a good place spiritually. If anything that deviates me from that, so for example, I begin to worry about how much I'm earning, then money becomes more important than anything else. And if you follow those trains of thought, then invariably you begin to recognize that somewhere along the line, it involves less consideration for other people and other life forms. Similarly, if you begin to worry about comfort, so that's what we saw in Marichi's life, then if your comfort becomes important, then it's a slippery slope. So meaning you are getting into the experience of physical comfort and discomfort as being more important than the spiritual awareness, because ultimately people who recognize this can completely ignore physical problem and physical discomfort and remain very equanimous in all kinds of difficulties. But the moment you make the physical comfort as more important, then there is a scope for falling down. So those are the things that if you recognize that kinds of faults that we entertain in our lives can very easily lead us down a path that can make it very easy to fall very far spiritually. And what we have seen in Bhagwan Mahavir's life that we discussed just some time ago, that from a certain life of elevation, you fall down and you don't even get a human life. And this remained a fact for a very long time. But then, because of the nature of the soul and because it's a soul of a Tirthankar Paramatma, the rise up happens slowly in many ways, but in a different way of looking at it, it is actually much faster than a lot of us might experience if we ever fell down that far down. And it's quite likely that we have actually fallen down that far down many, many times in the past. Okay. Any other thoughts on what Nilmaj said? Sorry, I go on and on. Hopefully what I've
No, I
said.
think you explained it far better than I kind of said. So it makes more sense now.
I'm glad. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on the story. So as we said, life number 7, just a few other questions. Just to clarify things so that people understand, just some questions. Does life as a day always represent spiritual progress? What do people understand? Here it may be useful to understand what the life as a Dev is. Now, Devs are not born like us, so they do not spend few months of the life after conception. So the conception is different in the womb of a mother. There are no mothers. Devs are born in what is called a Dev Syaya. Their bodies are made of different kind of matter called Vaikriya Pudgal, which can change. They can make it change and in different forms and shapes at will. There is a core body with which the soul gets born, and the process takes place in a place called Dev Syaya, and it happens over a short period of time, and in the full final form over a very short period of time, and they remain in that form most of their lives. So they're not plagued by any disease because the body doesn't deteriorate because the nature of the matter of which it is made. And there are other advantages here, and we'll come to the disadvantages. So does life as a Dev always represent spiritual progress is the question that we are trying to understand or answer. Now, let me just read this as a narrative that Sunanaben Vora uses in describing the after the life of Marichi, Bhagwan Mahavir's soul is born in the 5th Brahm Devlok. Now that was quite high. And there is some description about what happens in Devlok. I'll just read it out in Gujarati. I'm sure most of you will understand this. સંસારની ચારે ગતિ ભૌતિક સુખની અપેક્ષાએ દેવલોકમાં મનુષ્યલોકના ચક્રવર્તીના સુખો કરતા પણ વિશેષતા હોય છે. Meaning their material happiness and the pleasures of the senses are much greater in the life as a Dev. Even in those who are in the lower Devloks, they do not have the pain of being born. શુભ પુદ્ગલોની સ્યાયામાં યવન વય જેવું રૂપવાન શરીર ઉત્પન્ન થાય છે, meaning that they are born as if in full blown youth. તેમનું શરીર વૈક્રિય હોવાથી શારીરિક રોગ જેવી વ્યાધિ નથી, meaning they do not have any kind of illness because of the nature of the body itself. પુત્રાદિની પ્રાપ્તિ જેવી જંજાળ નથી, meaning that they do not give birth to any children. ગૃહ ક્ષેત્ર આદિ વસાવા કે રક્ષણ કરવાની ચિંતા નથી, meaning they are not bothered by buying a house, settling in, living in a place. So the place where they live in is all set up if there is a place, and otherwise they have the ability and the will to move and make any place their home. They do not have the worry of protecting their possessions. ક્ષેત્ર આદિ વસાવા કે રક્ષણ કરવાની ચિંતા નથી, ધન કમાવાની ઉપાધિ નથી, meaning they do not need any money and do not have to make any effort to actually earn a living. આહાર આદિના પ્રયોજનની આધિ નથી, meaning that they are not necessarily reliant on any food. They consume very little and their bodies are so designed that they can absorb the necessary material from the atmosphere. આયુષ્ય પણ દીર્ઘકાળનું હોય છે, meaning their lifespans are very long. અપ્સરા આદિના સુખ ભોગમાં સમય પસાર થાય છે, so their sensual pleasures are what they spend most of their life enjoying. If that particular soul in Devlok has acquired some kit in the past, so then they are aware. So kank jagrut hoy, and then they engage in spiritual awareness and progress, and they are very aware, and that is what we will see in Bhagwan Mahavir's life and where other devas come and worship Tirthankar Paramatmas. And if they remain spiritually progressive, then the life following that Dev's life, they would be born as a human being. Otherwise, what it describes here, nahi to જીવ સંકિત સહિત હોય તો તે કંઈક જાગૃત હોય તો વળી પુનઃ માનવ જન્મ પામે, નહીં તો પ્રાય મરીને એકેન્દ્રિયપણે ઉત્પન્ન થાય. Meaning from the life of a five-sensed Dev, if you are not spiritually aware, the next life may be spent as one-sensed life form. One sense meaning Prithvi, earth, fire, water, wind, and vanaspati meaning plant life, all one-sensed life forms. So from a five-sensed life form with huge amount and massive power and enjoyment, the soul can drop down in the next life to a one-sensed life form. So does life as a day always represent spiritual progress? Often, if you are not spiritually aware and have not acquired a level of spiritual progress, then after that life of enjoyment and a very, very long life, you drop straight down to a one-sensed life form. Does the soul have the potential to progress spiritually from life as a five-sense thriyant? Meaning, if you are an animal, if you are, say, an elephant, or, for example, you are a snake like Chand Kaushik. So the answer I've just given you, there are examples in Bhagwan Parshvanath's lives where his spiritual progress rekindles in the life as an elephant. The Chand Kaushik Nag, who was very fortunate to have Bhagwan Mahavir visit him and be instrumental in helping him lose his anger and making him spiritually aware by catalyzing his recollection of his previous lives and recognizing how he had progressively become more and more angry, and as a result of which he had acquired this life as a very, very poisonous snake called Chand Kaushik. And in this life, he was responsible for the deaths of a huge number of other life forms, so much so that the forest in which he was living was all burnt down because of his poison, and people just wouldn't visit around him, who would not come near him until Bhagwan Mahavir arrived with the intention of making him spiritually aware, and he achieves that. So does the soul have the potential to progress spiritually from life as a five-sense thriyant? The answer is yes. The answer to number one is, does life as a day always represent spiritual progress? The answer is no. Does a life as a being in a narak always mean spiritual decline? Again, as we know, it doesn't. So at the moment, as we've heard before, the first Tirthankar in the next Chuvisi in this Bharat Kshetra that we are living will be the soul of King Shrenik, who was around at the time of Bhagwan Mahavir, and he was a very, very devout disciple of Bhagwan Mahavir. His soul is currently in Narak, and in his next life as a Tirthankar, he will be born from Narak. So the life in Narak does not always mean spiritual decline, because there is this awareness that I am here where I am as a result of my past karmas, and the soul maintains its equanimity and understanding of the true nature of the soul and maintains in a peaceful stance without hatred for anybody in this life in Narak where there is extreme pain. So a life in Narak, there is never a moment of peace and happiness, except moments when, say, for example, a Tirthankar Paramatma's Kalyanak happens. Even lives in Narak may experience, we will experience moments of peace and happiness, but that is all that they will ever experience in terms of happiness in life as Narak. Is it possible that we've been to Narak? I would say probably countless number of times, and there's probably no counting, only a Keval Gnani would know. And what makes a human life so precious? I think you all know the answer, that this is the only life from which you can progress on towards achieving moksha. Okay. Now, Bhagwan Mahavir's 27 lives, the 8th life from the previous life in Saudharma Devlok, is born as Agni Dyot, a Brahmin, in a place called Chaitya Sannives, it's called. His lifespan was 60 lakh purvas. Towards the end of this long life, he becomes a Tridandi again, and after the end of this life, the soul is born in the second Devlok, Ishan Devlok, with a moderate lifespan. So from now, there is very slow spiritual progress with acquisition of more karmas, punya karmas, that take him to higher and higher Devlok. 9th life, after the 8th life as Agni Dyot Brahmin, it's as a Dev in second Ishan Devlok. So these are the Vaimanic Devloks. So Ishan is the second Vaimanic Devlok. In this life, his lifespan is of moderate length, so Madhyam Sthiti. Exact number is not given in this text, but it would extend to probably Sagarupams, which is an extremely long time. 10th life as Agni Bhuti, again a Brahmin. So from here, from the Devlok, because of the soul is progressing, the next life is not that of a one-sensed or life form or a Tiriyanch life forms, 2-sensed, 3-sensed, 4-sensed, 5-sensed subhuman life forms, but again as a human being. So the 10th life is Agni Bhuti, a Brahmin. The soul is born in a place called Mandar as a Brahmin with a lifespan of 56 lakh purvas. Towards the end of this life, he becomes a Tridandi again. And following the death in this life, the soul is born in Sanat Kumar Devlok as a Dev with a moderate lifespan. So again, a higher Devlok. 11th life, Sanat Kumar Devlok, medium length lifespan. The strength of the punya karma determines which devlok one gets born in and with what length of the lifespan. The maximum lifespan in a devlok is 33 sagarupams, which is a huge amount of time. But within this time cycle, say from the descending time cycle that we live in, is thus 10 Koda Kodi Sagarupams. Code is crore. Koda Kodi means crore multiplied by crore, and that many Sagarupams. The time in which the 24 Tirthankars actually were born and achieved Nirvana was only 1 Koda Kodi Sagarupam. Less 42,000 years. We are in the 5th Ara now, and we spent about 2,600 years out of the 21,000 years of the 5th Ara. When the 5th Ara finishes, there'll be a 6th Ara, which will have 21,000 years. So the time span in which the 24 Tirthankars were born and achieved Nirvana was 1 Koda Kodi Sagarupam. And the lifespan, the maximum lifespan in Devlok is 33 Sagarupams. And in Narak as well, the maximum lifespan is 33 Sagarupams. The minimum lifespan, I think, in Devlok is about 10,000 years. But I'm not absolutely sure. So if Bharat Bhai has joined us today, then maybe Bharat Bhai, you can confirm if I'm right or wrong. The stronger the
yes, it is 10,000 years, Ajitbhai.
Thank you, Bharat Bhai. Yeah. So 10,000 years is the minimum lifespan. The maximum lifespan is 33 Sagrupam in as a Dev. The stronger the punya, the higher the Devlok and the longer the lifespan. That is where we'll end today. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll pick up again from the 12th life. So 11th life was Dev Sanat Kumar, and the other significant life forms that are we will discuss over the next few weeks will start in 2 weeks' time. So Bijal, you raised your hand. Let me just stop sharing my screen. So that's the end of the slides. Okay, go on, Bijal.
Pranam Jai Jinendra Badane.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, apne human life form je che manushya is really fortunate ke we can progress, but equally we all get caught up in the running of the life itself and forget our atma and end up doing some often more bad than good and less progress for the atma.
Yeah.
So with the devlok, તમે કીધું કે you have all the pleasures and availability of everything. They don't want for anything, food or wealth, or everything is available.
Without any effort.
Does that mean ke more often than not કે દેવલોકમાં જઈને સુખમાં એટલા involved થઈ જાય કે they go backwards?
Absolutely, you're right. And there is a great likelihood of that happening because you would completely forget anything else. So in Devlok, if you, from the day that you are born in a Devsyaya and recognize what's around you and what is open to you and the powers that you have, and then you get so engrossed in that, and you might think, so one of the things that people ask and wonder, if there is a Devlok, why don't those people, the Devs, come down and visit their loved ones in their previous life? So if as a Dev, you think, okay, I will go and make myself known to my relatives in some way from my previous life because I loved this person so much, I must remind them. And that there are examples of that having happened in the past. These days it is very rare, but they might think, yes, I will go, but let me just finish watching this particular drama that is being run at the moment. And there are narratives which say that that drama can be last maybe a few hundred years. By that time, your relatives have already died and gone into many other life forms. So all kinds of distractions can prevent you from getting anywhere spiritually. But if you entertained an awareness and developed that to a level and formed it like a sanskar, meaning that is then become inbuilt in you during a human life. So what we often try and emphasize that in this life, the thing to do most is to firmly embed the understanding of what is spiritually your welfare. So recognizing the soul and becoming aware of your spiritual welfare, and that ensuring that you develop the virtues to such an extent that they become incorporated in you, so that in your future lives there is always a sanskar or a reminder of that understanding. because most souls, unless you are in Narak or you are in Devlok, you will not remember your previous lives.
Do they have like we have our sadhu sadhvijis to guide us?
No,
They
I mean,
don't have anyone.
they don't have any sadhu sadhujis in Devlok. Obviously, they would be able to come down to anywhere where there are Tirthankar Paramatmas. So currently, with the 20 Tirthankar Paramatmas, there would be crores of devs in their seva on a daily basis all the time. So they would be devs who are aware and who would come down. And as you might know about how devs go and celebrate the birth of a Tirthankar Paramatma.
Yeah.
And then there is a particular verse in there that some of them will come and celebrate the birth of a Tirthankar Paramatma because they are out there to watch a spectacle, or they may have been ordered by the Indra to come, or they may have been persuaded by their wives that let's go and have a look. And that is how it's described in the Snatra Puja as to how all the devs would go. But those who are spiritually aware would have a natural tendency and an interest. And there are those who are constantly seeking more knowledge and answers, even though they have Audhignan, their knowledge is still very limited, and they would be seeking further understanding of the universe from enlightened Kevalgnani souls and Tirthankar Paramatmas. And Kevalgnani and Tirthankar Paramatmas would be often constantly answering questions from such devs.
Okay, that makes sense. And just sorry, one more thing. In there's dev in Narak as well, right? They have responsibilities to do.
Yes, so they are called Paramadhami devs, and they are only there in the upper Naraks, the I think 1, 2, and 3, and their responsibility is to punish those.
So they then keep more and more karma bindarake,
Yep. So
even though they've become a dev.
yes, even though they become a dev, that is their life. And those who are born as Paramadhami devs, there is a particular kind of human beings who acquire that kind of karma to become Paramadhami dev, and in their life, but by their nature, sooner or later, they will progress onwards spiritually.
Okay,
So
thank
have
you.
we been Paramadhami devs and punished other souls in Narak? Very likely you've been there as well.
Mhm. Thank you.
You know, some of the things that always stick with me is that if you look at your own journeys and understand where you have been in the past, there is no place that we have not been. There is no life form that we've not been. And having been everywhere, experienced everything, our still endearing interest in everything that is related to a sensual pleasures, is again surprising. But if we begin to understand that everything that we desire, we've had much better in the past as devs. Everything that we detest and hate and dislike about our life, we've seen worse. So that level of equanimity is something that can be easy to cultivate if we become that enlightened. And that can only happen with practice. As I was telling you all in last week's Wednesday class, that this knowledge and this understanding, I mean, it's not just knowledge, it's not just thoughts. It has to then get incorporated into your soul. It has to get incorporated into your being and by your very nature should begin to change, and that is when real spiritual progress starts. So ultimately, it is about becoming a better person. It's about becoming a better soul. It's about abandoning your faults and all the wrong and bad beliefs and understanding that you hold, all the grudges that you hold, and accept forgiveness, friendship to all life, and a benevolent nature. And by its very nature, that state is much more blissful than anything else that we experience. So the simple answer is, if you are happy and you are very peaceful, then you're on the right path.
Ajitbhai, Nick has sent in a question.
Yeah.
He's asked, please can you confirm, first of all, do devs have a physical body?
Yes.
And secondly, do they have parents?
No, they do not have parents, and they do have a physical body. As I said at the beginning, devs are born with the kind of material which is called Vaikriya material. Now, Vaikriya material is something, I mean, I don't know. Again, there are examples of in science fiction that may sort of help you understand. Any fans here of Star Trek Deep Space Nine? Nick, have you watched Deep Space Nine? Maybe not. There is a particular character which has got that kind of a body, can take on any shape. So, and then, I mean, I'm just giving you this as examples, not saying that this is fictional, but I'm just saying that to understand exactly what kind of bodies devs and also life in Narak are made of, they are not born of parents. They're born fully formed as adult youthful beings with adult youthful bodies within a short time. So the moment a soul enters the Devsyaya in a Devlok, the body starts forming, and within a short time, I think there is a specific time span, a fully
It's an
formed
Antarmurat, Ajitbhai.
Antarmurat. Yeah, so it's a very short time, Antarmurat, and thank you, Pratai. And they are born fully formed, and they remain with that body. So as I said, they do not have disease. When their lifespan ends, there are some indications to tell them that their life is going to end. And that is when they begin to suffer, thinking that all this is going to disappear very soon. There are also the other areas where they got pain and discomfort, or even though they got everything, they're still very jealous of other devs who are more fortunate than them. So devs in the lower devloks or devs who are in a subservient position are still very, very jealous and envious of devs who are higher than them and who have more sort of material wealth. So their degree of dissatisfaction, even with that great amount of pleasure that they have, physical pleasure that they have, can also be a source of deep unhappiness, regret. So, Nick, does that answer your question? So they have a physical body, yes. The only place where you do not have a physical body is moksha, because the soul is completely free of everything in that state. And that is what we are all aiming for. And that is the whole purpose of dharma, to help us get to that position.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I've not received any further questions in the chat.
So let's end today with Kshamapna, and hope you all have a good break and get some rest. And I'm hoping that what we've learned so far stays in your thoughts, and that we all make efforts to progress spiritually and learn more. And we will meet again in 2 weeks' time. Until then, stay well. चीनाग्ना विरुद्ध कहीं पण बोलायो होय केवा ये विचार आहे ते सगळे मनोचन काय करे तस्मिच्छामि दुक्कडम. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our great Tirthankar Paramatmas and our Guru Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. Manvachan Gayati Michami Dukadam. Sarvamangalamangaliam Sarakalyana Karanam Pradhanam Saradharmanam Jainam Jaiti Sasanam. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajitbhai. Pranam.
Thank you, Parpai. Thank you for your.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Sarvane
Thank
Jai
you very
Jinendra.
much. Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra.
Jinendra Bharani.
सकल विश्वना नाथ हे प्रभु शरण आवियो आबाळता हरो अधिक बुद्धि तू शुद्ध आपजे प्रभु कृपा करी कष्ट कापजे नव कदी करी भक्ति भाव थी नव कथा सुनी निज कान थी स्मरण ना कर्યું तेम ताहरू नाथ भलु थशे केम माहरू बहु बहु कुड़ा कर्म में किधा धन धुति करी पार कालिधा गरीब रंकने दुख आपिया तरु सुधर्मना देह कापिया अधिक लोभनी लालचे फसी फिकर ना धरी चित्त मां कशी कथन कई कुड़ा में मुखे कर्या वचन नीतिना सर्व विसर्या करवड़े कदी धर्म ना कर्या पण अधर्म ना कोथळा भर्या जगत नाथ हूँ डर्यो नहीं जरे अनेक पाप में संसार मां कर्या चरण थी कदी चाली ना गयो प्रभु सुपंथ मां दूर तो रह्यो चरण पाप ने पंथ तो धर्यो दीन विषे नहीं ते थकी डर्यो छल प्रपंच ने धूर्त काम नव कदी मुकी ओ छाप हाम अधम जात नो प्राणी हो खरो प्रभु तू थी रह्यो सर्वदा परो कर गमे तने जे प्रभु हवे मोहि बड़ू छूँ पाप संतापमा दुख थी दूरे नाथ जी करो अर्ज बाळनी दिल माधरो सकळ विश्वना